Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hi,
Hey, it's nice
how
to
are
see
you?
you.
You too.
Yeah, how's your day going?
It's good. It was like a beautiful day, and then it started really raining. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
kind of a bummer.
Yeah, yeah, I relate to that. I understand that. Here in
I
Seattle, it
know.
unfortunately happens too often. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. How's your
Well,
Sunday going?
good. It is beautiful so far. Hopefully it'll stay that way. Maybe we'll get to go to a dog park later or something.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to another episode of Meeting and Reading. My name is Logan Esterling, and my guest this week is Tamara Winston. She's an in-demand freelancer in New York City. She's played with the New York City Ballet, Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, Baltimore Symphony, St. Louis Symphony, and the Montclair Orchestra, among many others. She's a founding member of the New York City Woodwind Quintet Connect Five, which they're putting out great content during the pandemic, and you can find them on Instagram at Connect5_Quintet. But thank you so much for joining me.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit. So I guess the first stuff we can get into is let's get into cane brand that you use and the gouge that you use.
Sure. Right now I have some Vic from Oboe Shop D.
Nice. Okay, nice.
Yeah, and I mean I just went through the bag like right before. So obviously I live in New York, but I'm visiting my family right now in Chicago.
Nice.
And so I was like, I need some cane to
Yeah.
like bring so I can do this. Um, so I'm using this stuff now, and there wasn't like a ton of amazing stuff in the bag, but I think I got a couple pieces out of that. So I'm using that.
Nice. And what kind
And
of is it like red kind of medium soft or medium?
yeah, it's not super hard cane.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
I am not a super hard cane kind of gal,
Okay.
which might be controversial, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I like maybe a little softer cane
Okay.
than maybe some other people
Yeah.
would
Something
like.
you can make a read on relatively quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If I need, like, let's say I were to play an opera or something, I would probably pick harder cane than
Yeah.
certain
Make
certain
sure
other
it
stuff.
lasts for
Yeah,
hours. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I don't like having to sit there and scrape a reed into submission.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
No, thank you. Yeah.
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 Have you always used Vic Cane, or is there another kind that you've used like previously?
I have just started using Bitcane. I have spent a lot of time using Rigati from Roger Miller.
Okay, nice.
That's what I usually use. And earlier in the pandemic, actually, I was like, I need to be inspired because like
Yeah.
I'm not making any reads, I'm not doing
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So I have like boxes and boxes of cane in my apartment. And so my fiance was like, maybe you should like go through those so we
Yeah.
can have less cane in our
Yeah.
apartment. Um, so I went through a bunch of Pizzoni from 2014
Wow. Okay.
from MMI, and that's what I was using all the way until now when I have the Vic from Oboe Shop.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Totally relate to the the cane addiction. Yeah. I just ordered a
yeah.
bunch actually from Obo Shop.
Oh, good.
My first time ordering from them, so I'm excited to try some.
Yeah, this was my first time ordering from them too.
Nice.
So it's been good so far. I've made just, a couple reads. I haven't been making a ton of reads here, but I have some soaking right now, so we can,
Awesome.
yeah.
And what about gougers? What are you using?
Yeah, so I have an Inality I use it for pre-gouging my
Okay.
cane. And
Nice.
then I use a Ross.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. What about you? What gouge are you?
Mostly the HDR Farillo gouge, but I also
Okay.
just recently got an Inaleti, so I've been messing with that a little bit.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, and there's something so nice about it just vibrating so much right away.
Yes,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, definitely the reeds end up being different, right? A lot more like structure put into the reed.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Have you always used a Ross?
No, I started using Eros maybe 2 years ago, 3 years
Okay.
ago. Yeah. So it's been a while, but I used a furlough before
Yeah.
and just my Inaleti as like my gouge, my main gouge before.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
And what do you find is like a difference, one difference between the reeds you get with the Ross and the reeds you got either with the Inaleti or the Farillo?
Yeah. I mean, just like you said with the Inaleti, it vibrates really, really quickly.
Yeah.
The gouge is meant to be very active. And I find that with the Ross, there's a good balance of activity, but also that sort of like depth that you're, looking for. But the Furlough has like a lot of depth. And I struggled with getting a vibrant enough read on the
Yeah.
Furlough gouge.
Yeah.
So
It's yeah.
yeah, that's why I made a very drastic switch when I went from my Furlough to the Inaleti. It was like back like night and day or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I found that the Ross is like a good balance
Okay.
between those for me at least.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Harrison Lindsay, hi Harrison,
Hi,
asks,
Harrison.
hey Tamara, sorry. Do you change how tightly you pull your thread depending on how close you are to the top or bottom?
Top or bottom? Yeah. Um, so I struggled with a really long time of pulling my thread like way too tight, and I
Mhm.
found that that was causing a lot of like choking off the reed.
Yeah.
So I'm very careful to like, so what I do is I like tie three and then I gently pull and then tie three more and I gently pull. But I definitely try to like maintain an evenness of how tightly I pull the thread, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I do the same. Yeah.
But I struggled with it really, really long for like a long time with over pulling the
Yes.
thread. And then my reeds were like,
Yeah. Like,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Nice.
yeah.
And what about staple and shape? What are you using for those?
So staple, I use Pisoni 46 um, brass
Okay.
staples.
Nice.
I have some silver ones, but I like the brass ones. I know that might be controversial too, but I like them.
It's okay. They have a nice warmth,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I have always used those. I used Guercio staples for a while, but I was having issues with the overlap on the Guercio
Okay.
staples. My overlap was getting like really, really just it was an intense overlap.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So for me, I found that these Pisonis work really well for that. Get a nice, healthy overlap without it going to the
Nice.
extremes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say that those are like a little bit more oval shaped rather than the Guercios can sometimes be quite circular, or it seems like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, I guess I just like they fit really well on my mandrel,
Yeah.
the Pisonis, and I would say yeah, they're a little bit more oval. Let's see if I have a Guercio with me. I don't.
Ryan Roberts said, tomorrow converted me to Pisoni.
Yes.
Awesome.
But
Daniel
we can't we
said,
can't have everyone knowing because then they'll run out of them.
yeah, yeah,
Don't want that.
yeah. And Daniel Gurvich says the same. Overlap disaster.
Yeah, it was hard for me to get. They're also like slippy, right?
Mm,
Like,
mm,
am I crazy? There's not enough traction on the actual staple.
yeah.
So my cane was always like sliding around when I would tie on the
Yeah.
Guercios.
That's no fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And what
And
sorry.
shape, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So at home I usually use I have a shaping machine
Nice.
and
Oh,
I
jealous.
yeah, I use the -1 and 99 shape on that.
Okay.
So
Nice.
it's narrow. But here I didn't bring the whole shaping machine with me, so I'm going to use a Mac Pfeiffer.
Okay,
play.
nice.
That's my usual go-to.
And for maybe someone who doesn't know, could you explain the shaping machine and kind of how it
Yes, it's the best thing in the world.
it
Um, it's like a machine that has just the shape. Um, how would I explain? It's just like your shape is flat. Like if you were to use a profiler, maybe it would be
is?
the same idea. It's a flat shape, and then you just put your piece of cane on the shaping machine, and it has these two blades that you just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then you get a beautiful shaped piece of cane with no ears, which is like
Uh,
the
yeah.
best part. So you get tighter sides,
Yeah.
um, and you don't have to take off the ears,
Yeah.
which is,
Have
and
you
yes, Mackay, narrow shapes. That's
yes,
what
yeah.
it's all about.
Have you like noticed a difference in your reads since getting the machine?
Yes, my sides are tighter.
Nice. That is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I will have to say, so I've had the shaping machine for like a year and a half, maybe. And as you go, you do have to sharpen the blades
Gotcha.
a
Okay.
bit because you will get little hairs of cane
Gotcha.
that can get caught in your overlap. So then, like when you click the overlap over, you get these hairs of cane sticking out,
Gotcha. Okay.
and then you have to like then that can mess with the tightness of your sides and it can cause leakage. So just
Gotcha.
FYI.
Good to know.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
often do you have to do that?
I've had to sharpen the blades maybe twice since
Oh,
I've
okay.
had it. Yeah. It's
Nice.
not like a
Like a very
once a week
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to get out a new razor blade every time you
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And um have you always used narrower shapes? Is that something
I
yeah, I'm
have.
curious.
Yeah. So I was one of those people that went to college not really super knowing how to make reads.
Same. Yeah.
But my teacher in high school, she used a Gilbert one, which is that's way wider than anything I've ever really been able to make a read on. And I found maybe it's just me, but with bigger lips, you need a narrower shape, and I have very large lips, whatever. And so the narrower shape helps me be able to get the pitch up.
Gotcha. Okay.
But sorry, where I was going with that was my teacher in undergrad had his students make reads on -1N shapes.
Okay.
So I've always had really just I learned making reads off narrower shapes, and I've
Nice.
I've tried going back to my Gilbert one,
Mhm.
and I just it's too flat for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I've been curious to try the -1 and the -1 in, but haven't done it yet. But
I would go with the -1 first. The -1N is very intense.
yeah, quite narrow. Yeah,
I used to think I would be like, if I can make a read on this shape, I can make a read on anything. It's like so
that's hilarious.
any little thing you do. It was just,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, Daniel asked, do you use sandpaper after shaping?
I do. Yeah, I just do a little off the sides to make sure everything is clean,
Nice. Yeah,
especially with the shaping machine.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's see.
Well, one question I had for you was, as a freelancer, I freelance a bit up here in Seattle. How do you manage your reads? Because sometimes you'll need a principal oboe read one weekend and then a nice second oboe read the next weekend.
Yeah. I found just making reads a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
I don't try to make reads for certain events unless like let's
yeah,
say you have a known performance and you have to play like a triple pianissimo, low
Yeah.
B or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I need a read
Yeah.
that'll do that, or else I'll be humiliated. So
Right.
I'll like make a read like thinking about it like that. But I tend to just try and consistently make reads and hope that
Yeah.
something in my box will work for what I need it to
Yeah.
do. And
Nice.
it's worked out so far. I like was knock on wood for that one.
Yeah.
Um,
And when things are in like full swing, how many reads are you making?
so make I like to tie a read a day and finish a read a day. That's my goal. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'll sit and tie like 4 reads because I find that more fun
Yeah.
than finishing reads. But yeah, that's my usual. I try to do that daily.
Nice. Awesome.
So then it sort of ends up like your box is usually full. So
Yes.
you don't have to worry a ton.
And what is your like read making process from tying on to having it quote unquote finished?
Yeah. Um, I used to make reads all in one sitting, but I found now that I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, but my like attention span isn't as good, and then I end up making kind of silly mistakes.
Yeah.
So I try and go for I'll tie a read in one day and scrape and clip open to set the overlap and let it, you know, simmer.
Yeah.
Um, and I won't take a ton off, just enough to like clip it open and I'll let it sit. And then the next day I'll put in like the bones of the reed, right? Like
Yeah.
the main structural parts of a reed. And it'll play, like I could play it if need be, but it wouldn't be the most comfortable thing in the world. And
Mhm.
then I'll let that sit for a day or two whenever I get around to it again. And then I'll take it out and I'll just do finishing stuff on the read. So I guess you could say it's like a 3 day sort of process. But if need be, I would say I always tell my students that they need to be able to make a read in one sitting, like
Yes.
20
Yeah.
minute read. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are you working on today?
I just soaked up some of that Vic cane and I'm just gonna tie a couple, I think.
Nice.
Maybe if we have time, I'll make them make sound, but
Yeah.
was just
Nice.
thinking I'd tie them up. What about you?
I am just shaping some cane to tie later.
Nice. What shape are you using right now?
Right now, I'm using Mac Plus Plus. I've used a Mac Plus basically since I really started making reads,
Hmm.
um, and it's worked well for me. But I've just been, curious about something slightly wider. And I, at the beginning of the pandemic, um, I got an RDG2, which is
Oh,
like
wow.
the widest one they make.
Yeah.
And I've used it a handful of times just to like experiment. But of course, I can't get anything up to pitch. Um,
Yeah.
but so I was like, maybe I'll just do a tiny step, wider than
Yeah.
rather than
Baby steps.
yes, yeah. I was just curious, what it would be like, but yeah. But I'm liking the Mac Plus Plus so far. It's been nice. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, speaking of tying, one of our submitted questions this week was about tying, and someone's really struggling with either getting it accurate and like holding everything. Do you have any tips for tying that might make it easier?
Um, hmm, I would say just doing the process very slowly and carefully.
Yeah.
That would be just slow and steady versus just trying to like get a bunch of reads done. That's usually when I find mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Um, I remember when I when I was starting out, I made myself a little checklist that I would keep on my read like wall in my actually in my bedroom over there where I had my little read nook. Um, and it would just be like, is it overtied? Is it straight on the tube? Is the overlap set? Does it look like, 1713 or whatever you do for
Yeah.
your overlap? And I would, every time before I would like finish tying it, I would double check
Ni-
everything and go through it and like
Yeah.
mentally have that checklist. That
Nice.
helped me a lot. It was annoying for sure
Yeah. Yeah.
to like sit there and do that, but it definitely helped a lot.
Yeah. That's good advice. Like having it written down is very helpful because sometimes, you'll be rushing through it and you're like, oh, I totally forgot to check how, how it
Yeah.
was situated on the tube. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and anyone who knows me knows that I love lists
Yeah.
and making lists. So having a list was always really helpful for me. And making check marks on your list. That's one of my greatest joys in
Yeah. That is so, so satisfying. Another thing that helps me is I measure my read a lot while I'm tying
Yeah.
on, just to make sure that nothing shifted, that I'm not over tying, um, and a lot of so much of the read is determined by how well it's tied on. So I think, like you said, just taking your time is really important.
Yeah. So Mackay says, when do you decide to give up on a read?
Ooh.
Okay, so I don't like giving up on
Yeah.
reads, but I do have okay, let me start over. I work on a read for like 30 minutes before I put it away because
Mhm.
as I mentioned before, I like start to make really stupid mistakes. Um, but if I've worked on a read a bunch and it's just not getting better, I actually have a box of rainy day reads that if I'm in the mood for like a challenge to
Yeah.
fix a read, I'll go and I'll work on the read, which
Nice.
like maybe that's like super nerdy and lame.
No. Yeah.
But I do have like I call it my rainy day box. So like if I'm bored,
Nice.
I'll just work on those reads and see if it works. But I would say like 30 minutes on a read and then I would put it away.
Yeah.
But if a read is just not cooperating after I've worked on it for a couple days, and I know you're not supposed to have like practice reads, but I can't even like practice on it.
Right. Yeah.
I would put it in that box and just be like,
Nice. Goodbye. I'll see you in
yeah,
a
like
few
go
months.
think about what you've done.
Yeah.
Like you've offended me.
Yeah. That's funny. No, I actually have a little my little read case here that's like my um ones that kind of similar sort of rainy day box that occasionally I'll come back
Yeah.
to them and try, but usually they sit in there for a few weeks, and if after a few weeks of trying to get it to do something, I'll just toss it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been times where I've put stuff in there and then I come back to it and I'm like, why did I put this in here? Like it
That
feels,
always happens too.
yeah,
Yeah. You're
like
like,
it
wait,
feels
this is
good.
better than anything
Yeah.
I
It
have.
becomes like one of your best reads and I'm like,
Yeah.
how did that happen? Yeah.
That's so frustrating too.
Yeah. You're like, this has been here all along and I've been like struggling. Yeah. And so I'm also curious, so you started playing with oboe when you were in like fourth grade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you
Yeah.
start making reads?
Um,
You said mostly when you got to college.
yeah. So I was, in very at the end of high school. my teacher and I were like, oh, like crap, you're going to school and like you don't really know how to, like, I could tie a reed, I could scrape a reed, but it wasn't anything that I would really want the public to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a couple lucky ones that,
Yeah.
I worked on before going and playing my auditions, but I wasn't very consistent with my reads. I couldn't play only on my reads and
Yeah.
feel comfortable. But I would say the summer before I went to school is when I like learned how to gouge.
Nice.
I We sat in her living room for like 5 hours or something, and she was like, "This is how you gouge cane. This is how you shape cane, and this is
Just all in one. That's amazing.
crash course."
Yeah. That's so much to take in.
Yeah, but I really started being able to like, it took me a couple years too in school. Like, I'm not gonna say I showed up and it worked right away.
Yeah.
I would say like junior year is when I started to feel like not in a constant state of panic
Yeah. Yeah.
about my read. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you went, oh, Daniel asked, when choosing cane, do you value color or bark texture more highly?
I value first and foremost if it's a straight piece of cane.
Hmm,
That's like my first thing. If it's not a straight piece of cane, I won't use it. Um, but then I value, I would say, the color and the color first over
okay.
the bark texture. But if something is like grainy and gross bark texture, I won't use it. But usually they work together.
Yeah.
But definitely color, especially once it's gouged in the light. That's when I can tell the most about a piece of cane.
Nice. And what do you look for in the light?
Um, well, first an even gouge throughout like a clean gouge on the piece of cane, and then usually like a goldeny, nice, not harsh, plasticky kind of cane. I
Gotcha.
can't do the like plasticky cane that is like bright yellow. I need it more golden.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. As I said, I don't like the super hard cane.
Yeah. And I think when I was a student, I thought it was great. That's what I was always going for was like the super hard cane.
Yeah.
But now having had a little space from school and just like wanting to make reads quickly and efficiently, um, I think something more medium or medium soft is really nice to work with.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally agree about separation from school. I think that's when I learned a lot about
yeah,
myself and my read making.
yeah. Did your reads change at all when during that time?
They did. They changed a lot. They so I when I graduated from my master's, I went into a program called Ensemble Connect,
Okay, yeah,
which is a fellowship program at Carnegie Hall where you play basically just like a lot of chamber music, and there's a huge teaching and community engagement component to the program.
nice.
Um, and so you need reeds that one will play chamber music, which is a very delicate situation sometimes.
Yeah,
Um, and you also need reeds I found that you can just pick up and they can't be like super fussy reeds. So I needed reeds that could just go and be vibrant and responsive and, you know, not as fussy as the reeds that I had.
yeah,
And maybe they just got better because I had to have a lot of reads all the time,
mhm,
more so than I did in school, which is kind of weird.
yeah,
But yeah, and I had to be able to play loudly, which was something that was very new to me, at least. In
yeah,
school, it wasn't so much, I didn't find that it was so much about how well you could project, but it was very much about like how great are your attacks, or like how, like a beautifully refined read, which is very important to know
yeah,
how to do. But in the world that I moved into, it was all about, being able to play over, not over, but like being able to project
Right.
really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of contemporary music, so you needed a reed that could also take a beating,
Yeah.
if you will.
All the
Um,
yeah.
um, it was just, it's very it was a different, it was a big shift in my reed making for sure.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about like learning about um like finding a way to project because again that's not something you really talk about much in
No,
school.
yeah.
Yeah, and especially depending on where you rehearse, maybe you rehearse in like a small rehearsal room, so like it's fine,
Yeah.
right? And then you have like a week on stage, or every so often you get to play on stage. So you don't get a whole lot of time out there. But yeah, what did you do differently to your reads to be able to project more?
Um, well, I made my main focus the vibrancy of my reads
Okay,
more
nice.
so than, and not just like easy like kazoo-ish, like
Yeah,
ones
yeah,
that just like go,
yeah.
but being able to have a read that had more like built-in resistance, but then also was able to vibrate very freely.
Nice. Yeah,
That was that was like my that still is like my main
yeah,
goal.
nice. Let's see. Another submitted question we had. Do you break in reads, and if you do, how do you do so?
Um, don't really break in reads, but I do have, as we were talking about before, that like 3 day sort of
Yeah,
system of like making my reads,
yeah.
which I guess could be seen as breaking in my reads, but I don't play not really finished reads.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have a break in method?
Usually, like day two. So I also use like a 3, maybe 4 day process. So day two, once it's functioning well, it's relatively in tune, but maybe the tone isn't exactly where I want it. I'll
Mm-hmm.
play some scales on it, arpeggios, and like just do some fundamental work. And then usually when I come to it day three, I can finish it and it feels a little bit more like willing to vibrate.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I can remember being in like my freshman year of school and hearing about like the process of breaking in reads and like compromising way too much because I'm like, okay, I'm breaking in this read,
Yeah.
it's gonna get so much better. So I think moving away from that can be very helpful.
Yeah, I found similar things. If I were breaking in a read, I would play on a read that was like way too hard and then like screw up my bass. And I
Yes.
always found that that was the my like endurance and my embouchure would go and my support would go because it's less about being able to play the music and more about a survival tactic,
Right. Yeah.
It's like, can I survive through this thing? And that's like they already have so much to worry about as
Right.
it is.
Yeah. Survival
It
is like
shouldn't be a survival contest.
no. That's the last thing I want to think about. Yeah. And that actually brings up a good point or a good question that we've had in previous episodes. How have you built up your endurance? And, the most obvious answer is just to play a lot, but do you do anything specific?
I love long tones, which is maybe kind of lame, but I love a good long tone. Um, and I try to warm up, you know, fair like every day. I try to do a good warm up where you do long tones and scales, and I found that having the ability to I don't want to say control because I hate control, but like have efficient long tones and beautiful long tones, that
Yeah.
helps a lot with the endurance.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. What about you? Do you do
I do a lot of long tones as well. I really like slurred ninths as well.
that?
Those are fun and a nice challenge. Um, but yeah, I think getting an efficient warm up in is a really good way to build in just to build in time that you're devoted to the fundamentals of your playing. I think so many people in school don't necessarily do that, or they don't have like a prescribed way to do that, right? They're just kind of like feeling it out,
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
feels good. Um, but I think really challenging yourself in your warm up is really helpful. I also do a lot of embouchure push-ups. You know,
oh,
holding a little reed in my mouth while I'm
yeah.
making reeds or doing some other stuff, just to kind of build up that strength.
I used to do those all the time.
Yeah.
On the subway
Nice. Yeah.
before masks were a thing. I
Yeah.
would take one of those Starbucks, like coffee stoppers,
Yeah.
and I would just like sit on the subway, like, and no one bothered me.
Yeah.
People, they think you're an insane person,
Yeah.
so it's great.
That's so fun. Harrison said, "Long tones aren't nerdy any more than playing a beautifully tailored line is nerdy."
Yeah,
Amen to that. Yeah.
long term.
Yes. They change everything. Yeah, I've done it in my car before and gotten some weird looks driving. But yeah.
Yeah, I also used to do that with in ear training. You had to be able to say solfege in like thirds and fourths and
Mm.
in the scale. So I would like be running and I'd be like, "Don't be so don't be." I would like run and people were like, "Oh my God,
Mm.
who is this person?"
Let me go to the other side of the street. Yeah.
Yeah, I struggled a lot with ear training. That was very hard for me.
Yeah, it's difficult. And there are obviously those friends in in ear training who have perfect pitch and they're just like breezing through everything. So
Yeah.
yeah. And here's another submitted question was how did you develop your scraping technique, and do you have any tips for someone who is struggling with the scraping process?
Um, yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say a sharp knife is the most important thing to a scraping technique.
Yeah.
Um, I I think that's where a lot of people's problems comes in. At least what I've seen is they just don't have a sharp knife,
Yeah.
and that can lead to like a whole bunch of
Right.
issues. Um, But then I would say for me, it took a lot of trial and error of just figuring out which way starting the scrape worked best for me. Which I don't, there might be some science behind it, but I think it's just an individual thing. Like, do you start by scraping the tip of the reed? Do you start by putting in the back of the reed? For me, I put in the back of the reed and then make sure that the plateau is not too thick before I put in the tip of the reed.
Okay. Nice.
That just works for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just takes a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy to do, when you are starting from the top down to take way too much out of like the top half of the reed, right? And then
Yeah.
you're kind of hosed. I've never tried just putting in the back first. I'll
Yeah.
try that. I'm curious.
Yeah, that's what I ended up figuring out works best for me. But I will say the sharp knife is just really crucial.
Yes. Yeah, because then you can actually learn how to scrape, right? Otherwise, you're just kind of
Yeah.
doing bad habits. Yeah.
Yeah. I left my easel in New York, so I have to use a
Oh no.
Sharpie.
Oh, nice.
It's challenging.
Nice. That's a nice reed making hack. See, Harrison asked, how do you navigate articulation in your long tones?
Oh, that's great. Well, I do a set of long tones, just straight long tones. So I'll go 1 to 9, 9 to 1 with my long tones, and then I'll articulate my long tones. So I'll articulate up the 9 and down the 9. And then I
Right.
also do upward ninths, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'll do those slurred, and then I'll also do those articulated. And
Nice.
then I do a set of downward fifths,
Okay.
where I go from B flat chromatically down,
Nice.
and I will do those slurred, but also then articulated.
Nice.
So I do 2 sets, and then if I'm feeling courageous or whatever, I'll do a double tonguing or like articulation exercise at the end of my
Nice.
warm up for my long tones scales, and then I'll do that. Or I've been doing more of a vibrato sort of thing lately,
Nice.
just
Cool.
because I feel like that's going
Yeah. Yeah.
with age. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm curious about like the pacing of your downward, like your downward fifths. How do you pace that? Is it similar to how you pace a normal long tone?
Yeah, so I'll just, with a metronome, I'll just play, I do it five. So I'll play B flat 5 times, going up your crescendo, then B flat going down 5 times,
Okay.
diminuendo. And then at your softest dynamic, you slur down a fifth. So
Okay.
you slur down to the E flat and hold it, and then you rest for 2 beats. Then you go to the A. You do
Nice.
the same thing, A flat, G, G flat, F, you know,
Nice. Cool.
like that. And then I'll do the same thing articulated.
Nice. Yeah. That's a fun challenge. Yeah. I do that, at the end of my A long tone, just going down to a D. But
Yeah.
extending that, up and down would be
It's
helpful.
definitely it's hard.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it also is very telling of your read
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
because I've definitely done some warm ups and I'll play on a read I think is pretty good. And
Mm.
then I'm like, this read is awful. I can't
Yeah.
do any of this.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah, that's fair. I tend to prioritize like when I'm warming up like a read that well, a read that I know, right? Hopefully pretty well. But also I tend to play on like smaller reads when I'm warming up, just to make sure that I'm really loose and really using my air, just my air, and nothing else. Um, I found that helped a lot with getting out of the bad habits of too much embouchure pressure,
Hmm.
stuff like that. I also do a lot of like aspirated long tones, um, like starting from 0 to 9 to 0, um, and I find that is a nice way. That's like my favorite way to start the day, honestly. Um, and then I'll just like slowly introduce the tongue, and hopefully it's light, but that's not always the case. Right, one other submitted question we had was, what do you work on when you're finishing? Like, what are your typical finishing scrapes? Um, and then there's a follow up question once we talk about that.
Finishing scripts. I would say that the most stuff that I work on is in the transition,
Mhm.
just getting enough layers in the tip and in the transition.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then figuring and symmetry. Symmetry is a big thing. Um, just if something feels a little bit off, I always check and make sure that the reed is symmetrical on both sides and that I'm not missing something like one side ends here and the other side's over there.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that can actually really totally screw up your and definitely screw up your read.
Yeah, definitely. And then the follow-up question was, as this person is still relatively new to finishing, and they're wondering, the epic question of, how do I know where to scrape? Um, do you have any advice for that?
Yeah. Well, I would say make yourself a list of objective tests, you know, and
Yeah.
for me, I had a great set of objective tests that were taught to me in school with, do your aspirator attack, and if that doesn't work, you scrape in the tip and or, in the back or wherever it is. But I would say make sure that you have like a set of objective tests that you go through with your read.
Yeah.
Um, so as I said, I do the aspirated attack one. I do the um, well, I can just tell you the octave like E, F, F sharp, and G to check the intonation of the back octave. I do A, B flat, B, C to check the intonation and the depth of the side octave notes. And I also check depth, like A, play middle, like lower A
Yeah.
down to a C, a G down to a C to check the depth of the read.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, I would just say really make sure you have a good set of objective tests that you can go off of.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little chart of those, the main objectives
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
above
Yeah.
my desk. Yeah.
Those are the ones.
Yeah. I remember when I started using them in school and it like blew my mind, and my read making too. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah, I have the like read the like big picture of a read
Yeah.
like
Yes.
right over my read desk at home.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
nice to be able to reference that, and have it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Another thing I struggled with, and maybe this is true for this person asking this question, but um, when I was in school, as I think a lot of us struggle with this, but going way too slow, and like really making every read, taking it just super carefully. And I think I was too scared to do anything wrong, but I think that was counterproductive to my learning. So yeah.
Yeah. I would say to that, make sure you have a sharp knife
Yes. Yeah.
because it's hard to go fast read making when you
Yeah.
have a dull knife. It
Yeah.
just really is.
Yeah.
You make so many mistakes. You're also like creating loose sides if you're scraping with a dull knife.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just
yeah,
bad. Very
it's
bad.
just bad news.
Yeah. I guess that brings up the topic of knife sharpening. How do you sharpen
Yeah,
your knives?
yeah. So I use croc sticks and then the sharpening steel
Nice.
from Roger Miller. This is like my like the first version of the sharpening steel, not the one that's out right now. But yeah, that's what I use. I also have an India stone in New York that I will use if this doesn't seem to work. But usually, if this is my go-to setup for
Nice.
sharpening my knives. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I'll regrind if and when necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How how often would you say you have to do that?
Oh, I'm pretty lazy with it.
Me too,
Like
honestly.
twice a year, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I like to have more knives I just buy more knives and then I
Yeah.
don't have to regrind. And
Yeah.
then I do like a big regrinding day or whatever
Yeah.
so that I can avoid regrinding a
Yeah.
lot. I just
Yeah.
hate it. I hate it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, that's fair. Whenever I start to like really work on a read, I'll have like 3 or 4 knives sharpened, and I can just, when one gets dull, I won't even take it. I won't even bother going to my sharpening steel. I'll just pick up another knife
Yeah,
and
exactly.
keep
I
going.
have a box. I have like two boxes. One's like sharp knives, two sharpened knives, and then I just go through it until the box is empty.
Yeah, nice. And what are
Yeah.
some of your go-to knives?
Well, okay. I have these. They're all, this one's from Roger Miller. I don't know. It's the just the straight edge knife,
Okay.
double hologram knife. Yeah, very, it's a cheap knife, and I just buy a ton of them, and I go through them pretty quickly. But it's a good knife, and I like the thinner metal because I find that easier to sharpen.
Yeah.
And then I was playing a chamber recital in upstate New York, and this um, man was in the audience, and he was like, "I'm a former musician or whatever, and I have a bunch of or an oboist, a former oboist, and I have a bunch of knives that I don't use anymore." And I
Yeah.
was, "Do you want them?" And I was like, "Yes, I do
Yeah.
want them."
Yeah.
And they were these really good quality, the Herder
Oh yeah.
Philly, yeah,
That's so
these
funny.
knives.
Yeah, I actually had a similar story of some like older woman,
Yeah,
and it's like super old. You can see the blade is like, yeah, but they're
yeah.
nice knives.
They're
They,
so, it's so good.
yeah,
And they're not really around anymore. So I was
no,
like,
yeah,
this is jackpot. Like,
yeah, yeah,
like, yes, I want your knives.
yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I have a couple of these, but I have maybe like 10 or 20 of these that I just
Wow.
use. Um, yeah. And then, yeah, those are the ones that I cycle through. But Roger Miller, these are the Roger
Yeah,
Miller.
yeah. I'll have to try some of those. Those are
Yeah,
nice.
they're my favorite knives
Yeah.
besides these Herder.
And do you use like a double hologram for the whole process?
I do, yeah,
Nice. Okay, cool.
yeah. That's another thing though. You do have to have a sharp knife even at the beginning. I'm all
Yes.
about those sharp knives.
Yes. That's the secret to a good read, for sure.
Yeah.
So, what drew you to start playing the oboe?
Um, it's kind of a funny story. I was really obsessed with Harry Potter when I
Yeah,
was in fourth grade, like really, really obsessed with Harry Potter. And we were like listening to the different instruments going
yeah,
through it. And I was reading the second book, which is all about like the snakes and stuff. And so I was like really into snakes, which is like I'm over that now. But
yeah,
I heard the oboe and I was like, oh my God, it sounds like a snake charmer. It's like
yeah,
the most beautiful, like I could charm the basilisk in the Chamber of
yeah,
Secrets or whatever, like beautiful thought I had in fourth grade.
yeah,
And so I picked the oboe. And um, it was really funny because I was playing piano at the time and I was doing a competition, and my teacher was like, "You need to listen to this CD because you need to learn." It was like some Bartok thing I was playing on the piano, and she's like, "You need to learn how to sound more like an oboe." So she gave me a CD of Alex Klein, the like
Oh, wow.
Vivaldi CD,
Nice.
and
Oh my
she was
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
study this, and learn how to sound like this on the piano." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "I'm quitting the piano and I'm playing oboe."
Yeah. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
It took me a couple of years to quit the piano, but
Yeah.
it definitely started the journey
Nice. I
to
love
the
that.
oboe.
I love the connection to Harry Potter. That is just too good.
It's, yeah, I mean, def can't make that up. It was
Yeah.
just, it called me. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like the those Alex Klein Vivaldi recordings could convert anyone to play the
Yeah.
oboe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, so beautiful.
It was actually for me, it was his recording of the Strauss. When I first heard that, I was like, I didn't know an oboe could sound like that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was what did me in.
Yeah. I had a lot of that growing up, and I mean, I saw Eugene was on this call earlier,
Yeah.
but he was my like childhood hero because
Yeah.
I would go see the CSO,
Yeah.
every
That was,
every week.
yeah, but that was amazing.
Yeah, it was like our big activity to like take the train downtown and see the CSO.
Nice.
Oh, I'll have to check out the Brazilian CD.
Oh yeah,
I haven't heard that yet.
I didn't know of that. Yeah. I'm curious how the weather in Chicago is for making reads.
Um, it's it's not great because it
Okay.
changes just all the time.
Yeah.
Like on Tuesday, it's gonna snow.
Oh no. What?
Like what? It's like 70 degrees today,
Wow.
and I was looking at my phone, and it's like it's gonna snow. Like I can't make any reads because
Yeah.
everything's just gonna change. Um, it's not great,
Yeah, that's painful. Yeah.
but it's fine. It is what it is. But I find that making reads in New York is easier. Maybe it's just because I've been there longer, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely a challenge for me when
Yeah.
I come home.
Do you do anything different to your reads?
No, I just start over and
Yeah.
I just make it from scratch basically, and then you can just sort of figure out based on your objective tests,
Yes.
what needs to happen.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. But definitely because I spent a lot of summers in Aspen, and
Yeah.
that's like a whole another ball
Whole
game.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a good learning experience for how to figure out how to make reads in different places for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Altitude is no joke.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. Well, I guess the last question I'll ask before we wrap up is, do you have any advice for like younger read makers who are just starting out?
Yeah, I would say if I could, let's phrase it like if I could talk to my younger self
Yes.
about read making, I would say definitely to just like slow down in the process because I was very much someone that was like, everyone's making reads and I can't make reads and I just need to be able to make reads right now. And I
Yeah.
would just like make a bunch of reads that were all bad.
Yeah.
And so I would just say like really slow down and like think about the process in each step and double check everything. And then also it's okay if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I still am really hard on myself if something doesn't
Yeah.
work out. But it's okay because we don't want our happiness to be determined by two pieces of cane
Brass.
vibrating against each
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just if you take a step back and whenever you talk to anyone else who doesn't play the oboe and you explain it to them, they're like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Like
Why would you do that? Yeah.
like that doesn't like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
yeah, so I would say like enjoy like learn how to enjoy the process a,
Nice.
a lot because now remaking is more it's fun if you frame it as like a challenge and like a little
Yeah.
fun adventure versus like do or die.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah. I for myself, if I could go back and tell 15-year-old Tamara, chill out, I
Yeah.
would. In all
All
walks of my
aspects
life,
of
I
life.
would say chill out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much for
Thank
being on
you.
meeting and reading. Yeah, it was so nice to chat with you.
Yeah, you too.
And I look forward to connecting more in the future.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.